Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. These days, it's rarely a case of if you'll be hacked and more of a question of when. Once the attacker has passed your defenses, they cover their tracks and systematically infiltrate your network to steal information or shut your business down. You need to rethink the way security is delivered for your digitally transformed business, and there's one security solution that delivers it all: NetScout. Get visibility without borders for consistent detection, mitigation, and prevention across any network, data center, cloud, 5G, and more. Learn more at securityweekly.com/NetScout. We are at Black Hat Day 2 of 2019 in our series of interviews with folks. I'd like to welcome Carolyn Crandall, who has arguably the coolest title of everyone we've interviewed at this conference so far. She is the Chief Deception Officer for Attivo Networks. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's nice to have you here. Now, I've done some work in marketing when I worked at Tenable and such, and I really like your marketing campaign and messaging with the wolf in sheep's clothing. It fits deception. It stands out. So if you want to start just by, like how you came up with it, what's the meaning behind it, and things like that, I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. We were thinking we're a deception technology company, and essentially we are the wolf hiding in the sheep of a flock of sheep. And so we thought, well, everybody loves plush toys at the events. We thought, well, this was a great way to draw a parallel to what we're doing and help people understand the value of being able to kind of hide in plain sight and be able to detect and derail the criminals, the bad guys.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now, have you made product announcements here or enhancements, or kind of update us on the suite of Attivo products and features?
Sure, absolutely. It's if you look at the two things with deception technology, it's being able to really cover the attack surfaces and also be believable, right? So if I don't look like I blend in, I'm going to be avoided. And so, as we have looked at our portfolio, and we cover everything from on-premises to cloud and remote locations, industrial control, IoT, all these specialized environments, we started to think about it, and what we've created is a deception fabric. And so you interweave the decoys and the lures throughout the network, but some people will go, well, okay, but you have to trip across it or you have to be lured in. And so our engineers really thought about this and said, well, what if we turn the entire endpoint into a decoy? Right? So there's basically no way for an attacker to be able to easily move off this endpoint. So if you think about what we had before is as the attacker looks to move laterally, is we had the things for reconnaissance, Active Directory reconnaissance, we had credential theft, man-in-the-middle attacks, and we said, well, what if they're looking for open ports, right? Things or services, and if we could redirect that attack and push them into the decoy environment, and do this both on the inbound and the outbound. And so that was one of the announcements that we put out. So basically, we're locking down the endpoints so that as they try to move laterally, they can't. The second part of the announcements was...
so sorry, on the first one, so do I deploy an agent to my endpoint
no
to that
agent.
deception? So you build into Active Directory those deceptions?
Yes, so we build into Active Directory. We've got scripts out on the endpoint, and then little secret sauces and things that we do. But the main thing is that there is no agent in our technology, and we understand, right? People don't want to put anything else more on the endpoint, but we've created, our engineers have created a really innovative way of being able to put these different pieces in on the endpoint and as they move through the network. And so it's working very efficiently and effectively. And
I love the approach. I think putting artifacts that are as believable as possible for an attacker, that when they start doing reconnaissance, which is the first thing that they do when they land on an endpoint, to steer them into the deception technology is just a great approach. I find it's, when I talk to folks who are trying to secure Active Directory, it's a really, really challenging problem to solve. And I believe you need technology like this to fill in all those gaps where someone's on an endpoint and they were just super, super sneaky. But I think the deception can trick them and ultimately lead to them being detected in the network.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of the step one. Let's detect that they're there. And then the step two is being able to build very specific threat intelligence for that individual company, right? We have all these threat intelligence databases, which are useful, but what if I can tell you the specifics of what is an attacker after in your network? How are they moving through the networks, their tools, their techniques, their methods that they're using? And so the neat thing about this is as we're able to redirect the attackers into the decoy environment, then they're continuing to believe that they're playing out their attack. And so we can pick up all the TTPs and IOCs. We can even plant decoy docs to get counterintelligence on things.
Yep.
And it really helps not only getting to root cause analysis, but also now you really know what were they after. And then you can look at your architecture and say, well, what are the attack paths of how they would get there? Maybe you want to shut them down. Maybe you want to reinforce by putting more deceptions around it to make it that much harder for the attacker to be able to advance what they're doing. And so it is one of the things that makes Attivo very unique compared to other detection companies is that it doesn't stop, right? You really get that adversary intelligence of what they're
What I
up
like
to.
about that too is I can do a threat hunt based on that. I can say, well, this attacker came in through this decoy and did X, Y, and Z. Let me go see what that looks like in the rest of my network and see if I find anyone else that tried the same thing, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's the beautiful part of it. So we have over 30 native integrations with pretty much the other tools that you have inside your network. And so if you want to automate rules inside of it, you can say, okay, I want to, in this case, automatically block or isolate or even threat hunt. And so it really reduces what we've been told is hours of investigative work down to minutes, and in some cases even be able to go to full automation. So it patterns like a ransomware attack. I don't want to mess around, right? I just want to block
stop it.
Right, stop it, and then I'll go and do maybe more investigation. But what the defender is getting is the element of time, right?
Yes.
Which can be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. And what I also love about it is I find it very difficult to, in some of the more advanced attackers, they're really emulating user behavior. And I mean, there's a lot of tools out there, and they do a great job. But still, at the end of the day, finding those variances between this user or this set of credentials normally does this, but in this day, they did something slightly different. If you've got 100,000 users, that's a really difficult problem to solve. But deception doesn't really have that challenge, right? Because the attacker's the attacker, and if you can deceive them, then you can discover them.
Yeah, it's pretty black and white because if you think about it, a deception environment has no employee production value, right? So there's no reason for you to be, doing reconnaissance on our system. There's no reason for you to be using deceptive credentials to log into even something that you believe is actually, production applications and other things. So it's the piece that I find not only for the external adversary, but really the use case of insider threats. Is that with deception, it's black and white, right? If you touch this or you engage, you are doing something that you shouldn't be. So maybe it's a policy violation versus full malicious activity.
Sure.
But you want to know, well, why were you in the research databases of the company? Why were you in the financial payroll piece of it? And granted, sometimes people are just curious. I want to know what my peer is making.
Right. Or I clicked on the wrong folder by mistake or whatever it was, right? That stuff happens.
And there's excuses, right? But if you're engaging with a decoy document or you're in a part of the deception network that you obviously shouldn't be, then it's very clear. But what becomes a really interesting debate on this is, do you tell your employees and have a zero tolerance policy, or do you not tell your employees so that you can track what they're up to and again, their motives and is it a ring of people that are all involved in this together? So it's very interesting. It's one of our top use cases as a company is being able to very accurately and efficiently detect insider threats.
Right. Yeah, and I like the holistic approach because it sounds like in doing multiple briefings with you, that I think a lot of people think, well, it's a honeypot. No, it's not a honeypot. And it's not even really a system, but it's also not just honey tokens. It's everything in between, right? So you can really emulate all kinds of artifacts, systems, applications, files, whatever it is, right? And I think that's really important to understand that you're creating this fabric, like you mentioned, a fabric of deception that I think really can help organizations fill in those gaps in their security program.
Yeah, and the wonderful part of it is it is a fabric, and a lot of people will think, oh my gosh, that sounds really complicated, right? Am I going to have very sophisticated personnel? Is it going to take a lot of time to operate this? But the way that it's done with machine learning is that It auto-learns the network, it prepares the deceptions for you, it auto-deploys it, and it makes it push-button simple. And so we have very large networks that people put out, and it's like, well, what was, in addition to us claiming, yes, it's better detection against better attackers, but what was kind of the tipping point? If because you got to believe somebody, it's like, well, yours is better than mine, is better than so-and-so's. But when it really came down to it, was the ease of use, right? It is so easy to set up, deploy, and manage, and then you get such a high-fidelity alert. You actually get a lot of additional benefits by deploying this over other tools, which you would still have a fairly detailed process in order to be able to respond to the attack. And so it is one of the things that's really driving the adoption of Attivo deception technology is that it's just easy, right? And it's accurate.
Now, when you're using the machine learning to create the deception artifacts, is it customizing it for my environment pretty much across the board?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's important, right? So everyone gets a slightly different deception based on your profile, so it looks believable, right? And I think that can be accomplished with machine learning.
It can, and it depends a little bit upon the deception technology that you're using. And so, and I advise people to look very carefully at the different deception platforms because they are not all created equal. But if I talk about what I know, which is Attivo's technology, is that because we use real operating systems, real applications, real services, plus you can upload any application, operating system, emulated system that you want into our environment. And so, for example, if I give you, we work with Bechdel Dickinson on medical device IoT. So drug infusion pumps are all over a hospital. We actually run their production image on our decoys. And so as an attacker, you can't tell the difference because there is no difference. And you even configure it to look exactly like what's there. Because if I'm running an SAP environment and all of a sudden I put in something that doesn't look like it, I'm going to go, that doesn't look like. If I'm on this medical device network that should have nothing but drug infusion pumps, but I have other software on there that doesn't look right, you're going to look at it and you're going, I'm just not going to touch that. But if there's really no difference and what might be attracting you is either a lure or there's a intentional misconfiguration on it that is what you're looking for to exploit, you're going to go touch it. And that's the only thing you need to do to trigger the alert is that actual engagement.
Right. It's creating a believable story.
Right. It's really believable. It's blending in. So some of it just slow down, stop, confuse the attacker, and the other ones is just really getting that full-fledged detection that's actionable.
Yeah, and I think that some of the misconceptions is, I just throw stuff out there, and it's like, no, there has to be like a story, and it has to be in a cohesive manner and be believable. And modern technology such as Attivo has accomplished that today.
Yeah. And you bring up another interesting point because a lot of people go, well, doesn't this create a dirty network, right? Am I going to put all these things out there? I'm going to have to patch and manage them. And because the way that this deception is deployed is the images are projected, or even sometimes we're using forwarder technology, so there's really no dirtiness added to the network. And you could literally, at the kind of a flip of a switch, like turn it up or turn it off. And so, there's some basic whitelisting you want to do. So, we don't interfere, they don't interfere. But once you've done that, it's very pure and very clean.
That's awesome. Any other announcements or things you wanted to mention? I know you also have a book as well. So Joseph Salazar, one of my coworkers, and I finished this book, Deception-Based Threat Detection. So shifting power to the defender. So we're pretty excited to have that available out at our booth at Black Hat in case anybody wants to come by and pick it up. It's a great, mix of general overview, but also some really useful information on how it's being used in use cases and deployment scenarios. So, and our audience loves that, by the way. That's the most popular question of our audience. Anytime we talk to a vendor, they're like, we want to hear about a use case or see a use case so they can read about them in the book, which is great.
They absolutely can. And one of the biggest challenges with deception, and I use this a lot, is it's like the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of deception is you don't talk about deception, right? So there are a lot of companies out there that are using the technology, but they just
don't want to talk. I don't blame them, right?
And even if we say that, hey, look, the external adversary is going to fall for it, but they're still wanting to sometimes keep it secret, even from their own admins, because they want to be able to catch things that are happening that aren't. So totally respect, and we've had, even in our advisory board, some pretty animated debates about, zero tolerance, color outside the lines, get in trouble, or no, I really want to be able to track them, see what they were trying to do, what they were after. And so either is okay, right? And then you can have your disciplinary actions already lined up, but it's flexible to go either way. It's just a very powerful use case, as are many other use cases externally. But again, people just like to keep it quiet what they're doing so that they can catch people's fingers in the cookie jar.
If folks want to try it out, is there a free trial or do you have to register for a demo? Either is fine. I'd just like our audience to know if they're interested how to engage.
Yeah, the easiest way if they don't know who their rep is simply go to the website, hit request a demo or request information, and we can we can get you set up that. There's an open chat, other things. So that's the best way, because it's always good to understand the environment and the use case to make sure that, because this is such a rich platform, that people understand, well, not only can you get the detection capability, but you get a lot of visibility into things. So as we do the machine learning, we'll tell you where your exposed and orphan credentials are, so you can shut down attack paths. We can give you some attack simulation tools to see how effective the tools are detecting the different types of attacks. And so by being able to have that conversation versus just, go download this from a website, we can actually help people understand the full benefit of the technology and then get the full value. And with that, we end up with very happy customers.
And plus, you don't want the attackers getting a hold of your technology either if it's out there, and I totally get that.
And it's interesting. You probably know Chris Roberts, too. He's our chief security strategist and very well known, but he literally took this thing apart, not only from the software, but physically took everything, everything apart. We have different versions, software and hardware, but so we feel very confident after he's dissected this thing. It's pretty robust, but
that's awesome.
But still, yes, we'd like to keep it keep it in the defender's hands and out of others as much as we can, and that's why even in some cases too, the forwarder technology I mentioned is ways that you can get deception into environments that you couldn't otherwise. So for example, we have companies that have facilities in China, right? So they don't want to put a physical box in there, and they can't.
I've heard logistically that could be very challenging. Yes,
it's very difficult. But if you just use a forwarder technology, you're not taking any data out, you're not putting anything in there, and so it creates a very again, another use case for being able to get very effective detection into environments that you may not be able to otherwise. So we have a lot of international customers that look at it for things like that, and data's cross borders, and then of course everybody's movement to the cloud. There's a lot of consideration to multi-cloud environments that maybe have detection to tools that work in Azure or AWS or vice versa, but this gives them the ability to have one central management system for multi-cloud environments, on-prem, industrial control networks. It's all just a way to get a view of everything that's going on very easily.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage our audience to visit the website and get a trial and a demo and check it out. So, Carolyn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
Welcome, everyone. We are here at Black Hat 2019 in lovely Las Vegas and doing a series of interviews with folks from the industry. I'm very excited to welcome Krupa Srivatsan. She's the Director of Security Product Marketing even at Infoblox.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, nice to have you. So for our audience, I know I've visited the Infoblox booth several times and tried to get a feel for what you do.
Yep.
But for our audience, I really want to hear your take on what problem you solve for Infoblox.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we all are living in the age of digital transformation, right? So it's no longer about traditional networks, workloads residing in the data center. It's changing fast and it's changing rapidly, right? Customers and organizations are moving to the cloud. They're deploying applications in the cloud. They're doing SD-WAN for their branch offices. They are doing hybrid cloud. They're doing IoT deployments, things like that. So one of the biggest challenges is how do you secure these new paradigm shifts, right? Your traditional security solutions are great for when things were within a perimeter firewall, things were within a data center. But that's no longer true, right? Because employees are accessing their company's applications from Starbucks, from home, right? They're always on the road. So how do you...
All it takes is one developer to have one Amazon account, and you could have 300 different services in the cloud, right?
Exactly. All it takes is that one breach, that one compromise, and then your whole organization is exposed, right? One thing that people don't realize is there is one underlying foundational network infrastructure that all companies use, all organizations use for connectivity. And that infrastructure is DNS, DHCP, and IPAN, right? Domain name system, DHCP and IP address management. You need that for connectivity. Your email applications, your SaaS applications, everything your whole internet connectivity depends on DNS.
And it's interesting, Krupa, in my history, I've been a sysadmin and a network admin, and I had studied DNS as part of my testing for certifications, and I really liked it. I configured it at home. And when I got to these organizations, even among technology people, they're like, oh, yeah, the DNS thing is like in the corner and it's running. They're like, yeah, you really need to go clean that up. And like I lift up the hood and I'm horrified, and I do the project to clean it up and secure it.
Right.
Then I go to my next job, and it was like the same thing all over again, right?
Right.
They're like, oh, you've done DNS before, Paul. You're the DNS guy, right?
Right.
So I learned a lot about DNS infrastructure and security. And you're right. It's so pivotal to everything we do.
It's pivotal, and people don't think about it until something goes wrong.
Right.
The other part of it is how can you leverage that to improve your security posture?
Mm-hmm.
Attackers know that it's open. DNS is left open in most organizations. Nobody's checking. Nobody is looking at the traffic that's going through the DNS protocol, port 53.
It's kind of a lost art. Like I feel like there was lots of DNS scanning tools that tried to do zone transfers, and that's still valid today.
Right.
And some people miss that configuration. And
Exactly. And when you leverage DNS for security, you'll be amazed at how much percentage of malware actually leverages DNS to communicate to its command and control site, right? So if you put a security on top of your DNS infrastructure, you can look for things, you can detect and block things like ransomware, phishing, exploit kits, advanced threats, right? Advanced persistent threats, data exfiltration, DNS tunneling. I mean, the list goes on, right? All of that can be stopped using a DNS security solution.
Does that mean I authenticate to the DNS server to do any kind of a lookup? Is that like one thing?
So let's say you have a compromised device, right? Let's say your laptop is compromised for whatever reason, right? There's some malware on it. One of the first things that malware does is do a DNS lookup to its CNC site on the internet. It does a DNS lookup. So if you have DNS security in there, it will detect that lookup, and it will not resolve that DNS query. So usually the infected device is looking up its CNC server to download additional malicious software. So when you stop that in its tracks, it cannot proceed with its campaign.
Is that based on a blacklist or in some cases or behavior?
Great question. It's a combination of both.
Good. I'm
right?
glad to hear it. Yeah. Because blacklists are kind of by themselves.
Right. And blacklists or threat feeds they're great. You need them, but they only tell you about the stuff that's already been flagged as bad. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
What if it's a new attack infrastructure that the bad actor has set up on the internet? A new domain, a new URL, right?
But
it might not be in the threat feed.
Right. But it's easy to go get a new domain, but a lot of threat feeds or threat analysts will look in and say, well, that domain's new, so I'm going to block it. However, what I've observed is that attackers are going out on the internet looking for what's vulnerable. Oh, that domain's been registered for 5 years. Well, I can just compromise that site and use it for command and control.
Exactly, right? So you got to use a combination of threat intel and blacklists, but also do real-time analytics on these DNS queries. So when you do these real-time analytics on these queries, you can detect those zero-day threats that are going to destinations that may not be in any threat feeds. Right.
I believe you because it does, when you look at it, it can be so anomalous if you apply the right analytics. In other words, like I've never looked up a .mx domain in my entire history for the past year. And all of a sudden one day I do, and it's only one, right? I'm assuming that analytics are looking at things like that I would look at as an analyst, right?
Exactly. Things that you would look at an analyst, but it's an automated way to do that and in real time. So you're constantly checking for these anomalies. And when you do that, you can detect patterns of malicious activity. You can detect DNS tunneling or data exfiltration via DNS. You can detect DGAs. I'm not sure if you are familiar with DGAs, but it's domain generation algorithms, right?
Yeah.
So that are specific to the DNS protocol or fast flux, which is the other side of the equation of DGA.
Right.
So those things are harder to detect using your traditional blacklist type methods. You need something that's more dynamic.
Right.
So those are some of the things you can do on the DNS layer. And so it's a great way to stop like 90% of the threats from spreading on your network once it's breached the perimeter.
I would imagine deployment's fairly easy. If we're just talking about lookups, deployment's probably pretty easy, right? Because DNS is pretty resilient. You can add stuff into the mix.
Absolutely.
Right? You can have more than one, and one of them is Infoblox, test it, and then
absolutely. And what you're hinting at, I think, is the scale. right? So, you need DNS servers, DNS servers are spread across the network to service the clients. So when you add security, you're now spreading that security kind of net across your entire infrastructure. And the amount of threat intel or the indicators of compromise that a DNS appliance can act upon is in the millions, right? So the scale is just almost like infinite scale, right? You can even say scaling to the size of the internet, right? So DNS is a great way to get that scalable, ubiquitous protection across your data centers, your headquarters, your remote offices, your SD-WAN branches, your cloud workloads, even your cloud workloads, your Amazon, AWS workloads, they all need DNS, right?
Right.
So it's so pervasive that you can spread that security and improve your security posture throughout the board.
I can imagine a lot of organizations find out there aren't filtering for DNS appropriately. In other words, you could have the world's most secure lookup servers, right? But if you're allowing them to just put 8.8.8, in, right? So I'm assuming your customers must figure that out pretty quickly. That I was allowing people to put their own DNS servers in for recursive lookups.
Yeah, and we do not recommend that.
Yeah, exactly, right. You want to block all recursive, the lookups and funnel it to.
Yes.
And I like the scale part of it too, because that's if you want to basically use the internet, you have to go through our DNS servers.
Yes.
And those are giving the analyst all those wonderful things that we like to go look in logs and write scripts, but you're providing that for us.
Exactly, providing that for you. And also, companies need to own their resolver, right?
Yes.
You don't want to rely on some third-party, random free stuff out there.
I agree.
Because, that's like an open door for attackers, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you own your resolver, you have the right policies in place, you separate your external DNS from your internal DNS, and you put the security in place so that, there are no loopholes, there's no back doors, right, through which your attackers can get in. The other part is I talked about scale, but because DNS security can block a lot of the bad threats earlier in the cycle, there'll be less load on kind of the perimeter security.
Sure.
They can just focus on more advanced inspection, deep inspection, and do stuff that they're built for, instead of responding to every little malware threat that's in the network.
Right.
So a lot of organizations who've implemented DNS security have seen a tremendous drop in the amount of malicious traffic that's going to their perimeter security.
That's great.
So that's like, they're getting more ROI out of those investments. They're reducing the cost of the threat defense. DNS security is definitely a much more cost-effective approach.
And I love security solutions that do that, right?
Right.
It's easy to implement, as we established.
Absolutely.
It scales, and I get a higher return on investment from my other solutions.
Exactly, right?
It's a winning formula.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say is the data that a DNS, DHCP, and IPAM server collects. So an IP address management solution actually gives a lot of visibility, right? There's a lot of metadata that you can get with an IPAM solution. Things like, let's say there's a compromised device. You want to know more than just the IP address of the device, right? Because an IP, you don't know where it is in the network.
Right. Who is using it at that
Who is
time?
using it?
Yeah.
How are you going to track it down, right? So when you have an IPAM and a DHCP solution coupled with DNS, you know exactly the IP address, of course, but you know also where it is in the network because you have subnet information.
Right.
You have VLAN information. You know who it's assigned to because your IPAM solution can integrate with Microsoft AD.
So they know which user was
which
using that
user.
lease, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know the historical IP addresses that device was using in the last 24 hours or 48 hours or a week. You know other domains that device has been accessing over the last few days. So you get so much more contextual information about that compromised device than you would ever get with any of the other tools. So when you combine that with the protection that you can get, you're now getting better protection, better visibility, and you can send that data to, let's say, a Carbon Black or some of the other vulnerability scanners. So now they're able to correlate, immediately know, okay, that's the device. It's in my data center in, place X, or it's a production system that's running critical applications, or it's this guy's laptop at his home. So you know exactly where that compromised device is or the compromised host is.
It's everything I've always tried to do with DNS and DHCP, but bundled up into a nice package that I think everyone should use. Like, why wouldn't you have this?
Yeah.
You need these services on your network, so provide them securely.
Exactly. You need it all. You hit the nail on the head, right? So companies need it anyway. Companies need DNS for connectivity. So why not just leverage that for security, then put the 50th another security tool in your
Another
network,
add-on,
right?
yeah.
Another add-on security tool that's going to add complexity to your architecture, right? This is something that already exists. You already rely on it. You already need it. So just add security to it. It's a no-brainer.
Krupa, how can people learn more and get a trial or a demonstration?
Absolutely. So, you can go to infoblox.com. We have free trials, 30-day, 60-day trials on our Blocks One Threat Defense, which is a security solution from Infoblox, the DNS security offering. So they can get a trial.
So you get your own DNS server you can point at for recursive lookups?
You can do that too.
Yep, okay.
We have a cloud-based solution. You can just point your DNS to our cloud offering.
Yep.
And immediately get protection. You can also sign up if you want to do an on-site POC.
Yep.
With one
You
of our
can bring it in
appliances.
locally as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So the choice is for the user. They could have on-premises deployment. They could do cloud-based. They could do hybrid. We support all types of architectures and all types of licensing as well. So subscription. So a lot of our customers going subscription actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Krupa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really good to chat with you.